hope we're going to have a cool session today. So one more minute and we can go into starting the presentation. Let me start sharing. Awesome. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me fine as well. So I'm going to try to take and cover all of the material first, because there's going to be quite a lot of things we're going to talk about today. And then I'll take any questions in the end. So feel free to just drop them into the questions tab as they come. And then once the session finishes, I'm just going to go through all of them and try to address questions if any. So with this, I'm going to switch into the presenting mode, which means I'm not going to see any chats or questions asked for the time being, but I'm going to try to stop somewhere midway. And hopefully the technology will not let us down today. Okay, amazing. Let's get it started. So the topic of today is fundraising this autumn and best practices of investor go-to-market. Before we dive into that, let me quickly talk about who I am. So I've spent 11 years in the venture capital space. My background is originally investment banking. I saw over 700 different rounds, successful ones. I saw many more unsuccessful ones. Helped companies raise over $3 billion. I've also been an operator myself. I'm an ex-chief operating officer of Clevo. We got to Series B, scaled to 8-figure ARR, and then exited to private equity earlier this year. And a founder too, and actually building something myself and joining the fundraising season in just, well, basically next week. So hopefully all of these tips that I've collected from different VCs and different conversations will help not just you, but myself as well. By the way, this is our third, actually now fourth series. So we've already done a general session on rules of fundraising, how to fundraise VC round in 2025. Also kind of metrics, what do people expect at different stages. We've done rules of surviving, specifically around raising Series A, but also there was a whole half of a webinar around financial modeling, valuations, and what investors expect in terms of metrics in different sectors. And we've done one specifically dedicated to pitch decks and how to build a really, really good deck. And well, this is essentially our fourth one now. So if you want to see previous webinars, we have some recordings, ping me afterwards, and I'm happy to share. Okay, let's dive in. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about what to expect this autumn. I've spoken with a lot of VCs. I've spoken to different capital raising advisors. I've spoken to founders. I've seen some close their round. So I've tried to kind of punch all of that into this presentation to surface as much of an actionable advice and tips and tricks as possible. And then we're going to talk specifically about investor outreach. What are the best practices to build at a scale? And where do you get warm interest if you don't have any? So all of that is coming. So let's start with state of fundraising market in 2025. What are we seeing? So funding is up. Good news. The first half of the year delivered $205 billion in funding, the strongest half year since 2022, which is great. This fundraising season in autumn expected to be even stronger. Average checks are somewhat up. They're skewed by large raises, but generally up. Great companies are also able to raise more at higher valuations. Now, unfortunately, the trick is the deal volume is down. Investors are much more cautious, so less and less companies are getting financed. So while it looks like the environment is getting better, in a way, you wouldn't be able to say that because the deal volume is probably at one of its lowest points. And that means that it's exceptionally difficult to be the one company that gets funded. Does it hold for early stage? So anything that's pre-seed, seed, and I guess up to Series A. Seed/pre-seed funding right now is flat and actually down if we account for outliers. Again, deal counts have been massively down. Q1 2025, so 28% fewer seed deals year on year. Average check has increased to 3.3 million at seed. Median valuation is around 12 million, but graduations are down massively. And graduations are essentially around how many companies are able to then raise Series A. 85% of seed companies today fail to secure Series A. The general environment can be described as flight to quality. Investors concentrate capital into fewer, stronger startups. That drives round sizes, valuations, and deal cycles, but that makes it more difficult to actually secure funding. US is doing much better versus the rest of the world. So 70% now of all venture dollars in the first half of the year went towards US companies. That's 43% growth year on year. 60% of all those deals went into AI startups. Rest of the world, it's either flat or down. So that's Europe, APAC, Middle East, etc. Again, higher checks and valuations, but deal volume kind of under pressure. I think if you're pitching and if you plan to pitch this autumn, one thing to be aware of is that expectations from investors have changed. So if you were in tech business, especially in SaaS business, what investors used to expect is that you would triple your revenue, then triple your revenue again, then double and double. And this would mean that on a course of 5 to 7 years, you would get to $100 million company in terms of revenue. And that's what equally kind of somewhere would mean that you're almost a unicorn at 1 billion valuation. Now, that's in the past. Everyone that we're speaking to today expects 4x, 4x, 3x/3x, especially US investors. European investors and rest of the world a little bit more relaxed on growth, not massively, but generally for the top companies that are raising, the expectation is that you would, once you've launched, you would do 4x in your revenue in year 1, 4x in your revenue in year 2, 3x in your revenue in year 3, and then 3x in your revenue in year 4. And why am I bringing it up? Is because if you're going and pitching, and if your numbers are off, or if you're saying you're going to get to 100 million in, let's say, 10 years, there is a high likelihood investors are not going to invest, because compared to the other companies that are pitching, it's just not high enough. It's just not fast enough. And on top of that, it also kind of signals that you might be in a vertical that is not as fast growing in terms of consumer demand. So keep that in mind when you're presenting numbers, but also when you're presenting your vision around where you want to go. This is directly from Bessemer Venture Partners. I'd encourage you to look generally in this report. It's super interesting. Bessemer Venture is obviously one of the biggest, largest, best investors out there. And they have looked into their portfolio companies and other startups. And this is how the revenue growth, ARR growth curve, looks now for AI startups. So most of the companies in the past, especially in tech SaaS space, used to be, you know, like a cloud centaur. It would take them 7 years to get to 100 million in revenue. Today, there are two types of AI companies: AI supernova, AI shooting star. AI shooting star are getting to 100 million in revenue in 4 years. And then there are AI supernovas that are getting there in 1.5 years. This is where essentially the competition lies, right? So again, when pitching, you need to think, where do you align yourself here? And of course, the story is different for biotech. The story is different for deep tech. So if you're a founder for one of those areas, feel free to shoot a question. I'll answer around the benchmarks there separately. But broadly, for everything that's supposed to generate revenue from kind of day one or once launched, these are the benchmarks you would be looking at when pitching to large funds. What it takes to raise money today? Really two things. This hasn't changed. It's team and traction. Team, obviously 2+. Ideally, someone in tech. I think very difficult to raise, even though technology has been commoditized, quite difficult to raise if you don't have anyone with expertise in technology or AI. And because the technology is so commoditized, today it's more and more around unfair distribution. So investors want to see that you're going to be able to take the product to market really fast. Ideally, not for all the money in the world. And what that means is they're looking for domain experts that have unfair distribution advantages, existing partner networks, maybe distributors already that are willing to take it on, maybe strong network effects, whatever that is. On the traction side, it's kind of like the more the merrier. But today, at least some level of customer validation in pre-seed. half to 1 million ARR at seed, 2 to 5 million in Series A is where would investors expect to see right now. Now, a question that I get very often is that it? And technically, I guess it's not. So the question becomes, do you need to have an AI component as well to get funded? And it's a difficult question because on one hand, everyone is pitching AI, and I'm speaking to founders who almost want to remove AI from to kind of stand out and differentiate. And then on another hand, can you be financed if it's not AI, given that we're in such a cycle where AI is massively hyped? So this is a quote from a general partner at scale, Rory. He invested in Bill, he invested in Box, DocuSign, WalkMe, like some really, really huge companies. His opinion is, if you're not AI, then this is the last round of funding you will get. And there are still other businesses that get financed 100%, but his advice is don't expect any money after a year/18 months, because 80% of people he can refer you to wouldn't take a meeting. Now, this is one guy, this is one VC. It mirrors a lot of other VCs, but the question becomes, what do you then do if you are AI, and what you do if you are not AI? And let's address that. So let's start with, what if your company has nothing to do with AI? A couple of different options. One, find an AI angle. This cannot be BS. It needs to be supported in team and customer use cases. So it's not enough to just say, we're going to have a solution in the future that's AI powered. It needs to have legs. It needs to have substance. Second option, which works for most of the people, like look at vertical specific funds and like some of the new smaller funds, especially vertical specific funds. Obviously, if the fund is continuously investing in real estate, if investing in retail, if it's investing in biotech, they're continue to do so whether or not you have AI component. However, in technology, specific technology, again, the expectation is mostly that it's going to have some AI component. I think I've spoken to a couple of new funds at around 10 million, 20 million that are still investing in just vertical SaaS applications, for example, that are investing in things that are not necessarily overhyped because they find more deals there. So this can be an interesting venue to explore. An alternative is also go with angels or customers who have deep domain expertise and understanding. So for businesses who can't get finance from big venture funds, the likes of Bessemer, the likes of A16Z, they can successfully get finance from people who understand them. So for example, I've seen a venture in e-commerce. They went directly to their partners, and the partners understood the pain much better than VCs. They contributed money. They were happy to go with it. They also provided distribution. I've seen a venture in the retail space where a celebrity wrote a $500,000 check because he liked the product and he was happy to launch it. I've seen a venture in the healthcare space and health tech space where future customers were the ones financing. So large hospitals that would eventually buy it wanted to be on the cap table and wanted to write checks. So if you feel like it's not resonating with these VC investors, maybe partially because it doesn't have AI angle for whatever other reason, maybe it's just difficult to understand, maybe they don't get the problem, then think about who gets the problem, who has the domain expertise, who's experienced the pain, and then try to turn to them because that can be another avenue. One of the quotes from Hustle Fund, they say, almost every pitch deck we see today sounds like we're building something powered by AI. If you're building something powered by AI, you need to understand when pitching that AI needs to be differentiating. It can't just be hype. There needs to be proof grounded in customer quotes or a number that it actually works and what people want. Vertical AI SaaS is generally in demand. Moat is important and talent is important. You can't be pitching AI powered if you don't have AI talent in your team. It's going to be exceptionally difficult to then sell that this is going to be a future AI company. So just keep that in mind. And again, if you are AI, think about how to position this, because one perspective is AI is overused. Don't mention AI. Another one is we won't look at the deck unless AI is there. So how do you make sure you position carefully? Like, remember that having an AI pitch is very easy. Having paying customers who stick around is what gets the deal typically. So depending on your stage, I've put down a couple of different points that can help. won't work in autumn 2025 and what might work. If you put something like we're disrupting the 1 trillion banking industry with revolutionary AI, not great. In this particular case, leave the AI out. You can basically say helping small businesses get paid 5x faster. If you're saying AI powered revolutionary platform, again, it's just vague. It's probably going to like ring those bells for the alarm bells for the investors. If you say automated payment collection that reduces wait time from 47 days to 7 days, that's great. And then you have a separate slide to explain how AI does that under the hood. What did you actually build in terms of the platform? Are there, agents there? Is there a machine learning algorithm? Is there like Gen AI that you're utilizing? Like, how does it work? What you've built, and give some tangible proof points around how that helps your customer. If you have generic team experience, again, it's going to be difficult to prove that you know something about AI. So your team then needs to have AI capabilities. If you don't understand gross margin and scalability, I've seen it multiple times. You come on a pitch, investor asks you, how is it going to scale? What's giving you gross margins? You're like, we haven't figured it out yet, but once we develop it and launch, it's like, bam, it's not going to work. There needs to be some knowledge of numbers and scaling logic. AI demo works if you have that, but AI demo in customer hands, again, with real numbers, how customers are using it, how they're seeing its value is what probably going to win, and then much more. So how do you increase, AI stuff aside, how do you increase your odds of raising this autumn? The first webinar that I mentioned, I've covered a lot of things there that are still relevant. So again, ping me if you want to access, but I think 2 were really important. 1, you want to engage with investors 6 to 12 months before the fundraise. You want to start initial conversations, and then you want to keep in touch. You want to send them updates. You want to keep warming them up and building up momentum. Investors back founders they know and trust, and that is investing in lines versus dots. Now, the question might be, what if you haven't done that yet? We're going to get to that. We're going to try to give you some playbook of what to do. But if you still have time, if the runway is not of essence, start now. Like, regardless of how far you are, just start now. Like, start networking, start meeting people, start going to local meetups, maybe events, ping a couple of different people who have specific experience in your domain, try to chat to them, because that's going to get you a very, very long way. Ideally, you want to meet them, you want to ask them what would they like to see to get you financed, because whatever metrics I can give you, in 1 or 2 months, they can be out. Absolutely. And there can be something new. It used to be Series A had a benchmark of 1 million revenue. Now it's like 2 to 5, and it continues to increase. So you never know what investors want. And the best way to know it is ask them directly, right? Tell them your roadmap, tell them your product, say, this is where we are. What would you like kind of to see before you get financing? And once you get that feedback, that's your North Star to which you can start building, keep them updated, and eventually in 6 months, they're going to feel very comfortable financing you. The second one is focus on traction. 90% of investments today are outbound. Make sure they find you. So ideally, obviously, you make the traction speak for you. A lot of people are building in public. A lot of people are just telling, let's say, customer stories, so investors can, see you. Honestly, like the easiest trick is I've put down on my LinkedIn building in stealth mode, and there were 5 VC just pinging me saying, hey, let's talk about what you're building. That's one way. Companies that are building in public generally attract a lot of attention. But even if you're not comfortable building in public, putting building in stealth in your LinkedIn, again, traction is what gets money, because once you try to start having those conversations, the only way people convert is when you're able to say, hey, customers love it. Our revenue is growing whatever percent months and months, or we've secured XYZ as our pilot design customers. There need to be some traction there, because these days the inboxes are so filled with thousands and thousands of companies looking for funding that in order to attract attention, you need to stand out. And very rarely product on its own is going to stand out, given that we are in this era of commoditization of tech, where commoditization of products, where everything is super easy to copy. So what to do if you're just starting today and you don't have 12 months and you plan to fundraise this autumn, and now Olena is telling you, hey, you should have started a year ago, and you're like, I don't have a year. So let's try to cover what you can do today and go into accelerated investor playbook. So starting with the math. Based on all of the raise that we've seen recently, spoken to probably, let's say, 50 to 100 founders that raised this year. To get one closed round, and that's minimum 2+ term sheets, let's say from funds, institutional capital, plus a couple of angels, you'd normally have 30 to 45 first meetings. And that means you would want to have 75 to 150 warmish investors in your CRM. It doesn't have to be someone that knows you, but ideally someone intro you to them, or they're your first level connection on LinkedIn, or you know them through some mutual people and you can ask for someone to intro you. If you say, well, there is no one I absolutely know, it can take, you can still raise cold. I've seen companies raising cold, and raising cold just basically means reaching out to loads and loads of people, but then the math looks very different. You might need, as many as 1,000 initial connections in your CRM. And you need to workload. You need to do loads of legwork to connect to people, ask them to connect you to more people, and to build out that initial network. When cold outreach works well, and you don't need 1,000 connections, is when you have amazing traction. So back to kind of, previous point. If you are here and traction is great, or the team is amazing and they've exited before, they've done super successful ventures, then you can send an old email and likelihood is you're going to get connected. But even then, it's not as good as warm interest. We know all of that. And the reason is investors treat this very much similar to like a first test in your venture world. So I see loads of people who say, well, I don't know anyone. I can't get, warm connections. And whenever I try to tell the same to investors, their pushback is always, it's going to be the same when launching the business, right? You wouldn't know any customers necessarily. So how are you able to persuade someone to believe in you if you can't growth hack your way into finding a couple of warm interests? So that's what it comes down to. So average successful founder, statistically, this is DocSend statistics, would start with at least 40 meetings. Average unsuccessful founders would have around 15 meetings. So if you're the one who's having 15 meetings, that's probably not enough. You need to get the velocity up. How do generally you plan to go to market? So, and we'll get to warm interest shortly and how you secure that. But just to kind of talk about how the timeline might look like if you are raising today. Successful seed raises, pre-seed is kind of the same, generally can fit in 7 to 12 weeks. Like pre-seed often takes 15 to 16 weeks. I don't recommend raising on a rolling basis because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort from your team. And fundamentally, if you are unable to raise in the span of, let's say, 7 to 16 weeks, the fundraise is going to be painful anyways. You want to build momentum in your fundraise. We're going to get to that a little bit later. You want to raise fast. You want to be able to, call one of the guys, another one is submitting the term sheet. When you have that momentum, you're able to close fast. When you're painfully going through it months by months, it's going to be exceptionally difficult. The terms are probably not going to be as great because the investor is going to know you only have them in the pipeline. So I wouldn't recommend being in the content fundraising mode. Ideally, if you didn't manage, you'll know whether or not it's landing in 1 to 2, probably even, the first 4 weeks. If it's landing, you're going for another, 4 to 8 weeks into due diligence, conversations, etc. If it's not landing, take the feedback that you got, plan for another 6 to 9 months with the runway that you have, and try to get to milestones that are going to get people excited. So again, in ideal universe, 12 months before you would start mapping milestones, you would network and map investor universe, and you would start lining up warm intro paths. Like, okay, I need this guy to intro me to this guy, and I want to get into this fund, how I can do that, etc. And then like around 6 weeks before, you pre-market quietly. So people you've already spoken to, you're giving them heads up, you show them your pitch deck, ask what milestones would trigger a meeting, line up some intros for the day one launch, and then you launch. And that's your sprint window. That starts now. That's autumn, where you want to batch first meetings over 3 to 5 weeks and aim to create that simultaneous momentum. Again, I don't think it's a massive issue if you've never done the minus 12 months. It helps a lot. We've decided with my new venture, we've decided with the team to fundraise a week ago. And we've just got the pitch deck prepped. And we've just had, well, actually, first investor conversation that ended a few minutes before I started this webinar. It's possible we have like 15 already lined up, and we haven't even launched fully. So you can do that, but you need to be smart. And again, you need to do loads of legwork. So the biggest reveal, or maybe, not the reveal, but the biggest and most important point for so many people is how to get warm interest. We get at WaveUp, I would probably say 20 to 30 leads daily that reach out to us and say, we don't need anything else. We just need warm interest. Can you get us warm interest? And the honest answer is we can't. So first of all, obviously, it wouldn't work if we got so many interest to so many people. But in early stages, it just doesn't necessarily work. Why? Out of our network, 120 VC partners, now less than 20% invest in early stage. So a lot of the market has shifted in from to having at least some level of validation, right? Like most of VC funds today want to have revenue. There's still a lot of capital out there for companies that don't have revenue but have good teams. There's still a lot of capital out there from angels, from specific funds, etc. But again, it's not something where, for example, we would be able, or anyone would be able to give interest at velocity, because the market is shifting. I've also spoken to like 40 different fundraising brokers in August. I was trying to find, for companies we work with, a pathway. Is there anybody who can give you warm interest? And 0 out of 40 were willing to take on early stage, like pre-seed or seed. So if you're thinking that there is a magic broker out there that you're going to come to and they're going to line up investor interest for you, it's unlikely to happen. There are companies who do that successfully. There are companies who line up a couple of different interests. They have connections. They can connect you to 5-10 different investors. But again, the math doesn't work out. You need 35 to 40. A lot of those would then be not really authentic. It's just someone doing someone a favor. So you need to do the work. This warm interest stuff is the work that you cannot outsource. It needs to sit entirely with the founder, with the co-founder, and in cut sit with anybody else. So again, what does it mean? You have to do the work. But with the right actions, raising in 60 days is still very much possible. So this is very text heavy, but I'm going to go through this fast because this is a little bit more important. Important thing number one is you need to treat investor outreach process as sales. And what I mean by that is you wouldn't really sit there and be like, I'll take this one lead, I'll speak to this guy, and then, revenue is not coming. So you're like, it's okay, I'm just going to sit here and it's okay, we're not closing revenue. No, right? You would get your team together. You would be like, guys, let's map everybody. Let's see how we can get the conversations. We need to achieve a minimum goal of this amount of meetings because we need it right now. Go. And then everybody works on that. And this work is not the work of one person. This work is the work of the entire team. You need to think carefully about your ICP, ideal investor profile. Like, what's the geography? What's the stage? What's the check side? What's the sectors? Like, who have they invested in? You have to think about sourcing and segmenting. You can use Signal, you can use OpenVC, you can use firms like portfolios, network graphs. Find the strongest intra-pass. You have to pre-qualify hard. Technically, when I say 30 to 45 conversations that you need to have, those need to be conversations of people who are actually investing, who are actually writing checks at your stage now. A lot of VCs are window shopping. A lot of VCs don't invest, for example, in pre-seed. You can still speak to them. They can be helpful for intros. They can be helpful for later stages, but they wouldn't count in that 30 to 45 meetings you need to do to reach to your funding. Prep the pitch deck, obviously. Ideally, have the FAQ appendix ready. So if you see the question coming up again and again, don't necessarily make your pitch deck more bloated, but include like one question, one slide to answer that question. Keep it in an appendix, and then you can pull it up after the meeting. Warm up the network. You can't leave them cold. And also, warming up is not, I see literally with everybody, you've had a meeting, and then people go, so any update, or have you had a chance to discuss, or like, come back to me. No one cares about those updates. They're bad. They're very kind of clingy in a way. I've spoken to VCs who absolutely hate them. So think about how you're going to be doing these updates. The only way to do these updates would be, doesn't need to be weekly, can be weekly, can be bi-weekly, where you send those updates to potential referrers, send them to potential investors, and they would go, we just signed another customer. We've just got this amazing, we're speaking to some amazing hires for, the CTO position. We've got this another point of validation. Those updates are important to both investors and to people who are potentially doing your intros. And then once you've done the launch, usually I do recommend, like, everyone who is supposed to connect you to someone, make it easy for them. Like, even write the text for them, like say, like, this is what you can forward, this is what you can send. Front load those first meetings. So ideally, you want to try to secure 10 to 15 calls in week 1/2, and then update them the rest with like fresh signals, and then nudge them again into week 3-4. So you want to run it as a very tight fundraise. And then you want to stack up the follow-up meetings, especially if you start getting to partner meetings. So typically you get like a meeting, maybe another meeting, and then you have to go into a partner meeting. Make sure, if you can, that those partner meetings are around the same time, because they create some competitive tension. And prepare before. If you're going into a partner meeting, don't just go there as into another pitch deck process. Ask whoever. So normally if you got to a partner meeting, that means you have a champion. Typically that's maybe like an associate, a principal who discovered you. He's the one who wants you to get financed in a way. So lean on that person, or lean on whoever made you an intro. Ask them a little bit about, like, what do these people care about? It can't be every person, every investor, same page. If they care more about your go-to-market, focus on that. If they care more about technology, focus on that. So think about how and what to present. And then again, run rolling updates. Some crisp weekly bullets to trigger that FOMO moment would be great. And then we'll hopefully close, right? You would want to keep 2 to 3 opportunity iron hot until you have a lead, and then align close dates, so that the cap table is not an entire mess. So building warm interest, things that work best for me in the past. Portfolio founders of your target firm were great. So that basically means looking, where did your firm invest into, reaching out to their founders who have raised, being, look, really want to raise from them, are you open to a conversation? A lot of them are, at least again, for me, it worked. They would take a call, you'd pitch, and then they would make a referral into their fund. This works really well, or again, has worked really well for me. LinkedIn, obviously, as boring as it is, your first degree connections are first degree connections, second degree connections, like, leave no stone unturned. The way we've done it is we sat down with our team, the whole 4 people, doesn't matter, like, if you're in tech or if you're in business or if you're in finance, you sit down, you pull up the list of funds that you want to get into. You go through your LinkedIn and you see who is connected to whom, like who can trigger whatever kind of warm intro pass to generate an introduction into that fund. And then separately, you just sit and you go through your LinkedIn list and you see, are there any VC investors? Are there any angel investors? Are there any potential referrals? Potential referrals are basically anyone in this bucket 7, which I'm going to cover now, but it's not just VCs that you would look into as part of your network. You would also look for powerful people who can intro you to someone. You can also use, so right now there's actually a technology. So I think OpenVC has it. I think NFS Signal has it. Another company has it. I'm going to get there. I forgot their name, but they would allow you to map your LinkedIn automatically and tell you which firms you have connections into. So, and like, do you have map specific second degree pass to specific partners? So you can use that. Cap tail activation works really well. Obviously, if you already have investors, angels who invested in you, even if it's friends and family, they are super interested to make sure you actually end up raising money. So ask them for 2+ intros, or secure well-connected advisors who can make 3+ intros. So one of the founder we worked with just now recently, a female founder, doesn't have a team. I could swear it would be impossible for her to raise funding. Doesn't have a product either. Raises a pretty large pre-seed of, I think, around 2 million. She secured 750K from a lead investor already. And the way she's done it is she just got a very well-connected advisor on board who is in e-commerce space. She's building a solution in e-commerce space. That advisor was able to make her really meaningful interest, just saying, I believe this works. I believe this person is great. And she was able to secure that capital, not an entire round yet, right? But that was after 1 week of work/outreach, giving that advisor a little bit of a percentage on the cap table. She was able to do that, even though she didn't have the tech. She didn't even have Figma screens around how it's going to look like. And she's a solo female founder. So miracles happen. Okay, past investors, obviously, one of the best referrals I got was from my previous company. An investor in that company was happy to make that referral. So that's obviously a very obvious but very good route. Strategic channel partners, like in e-commerce, development marketing agencies helped us a lot. In healthcare, sometimes even doctors I've seen helping founders. So anyone who essentially can sell your solution later or resell your solution later, if you're not selling directly to customers, or if you have that channel in mind, okay, I'm building this, who else would be able to sell it apart from us, or who else would be able to recommend us? Think about them as potential channel for warm interest too. It's actually double advantage because you potentially win a distribution traction, as in they're willing to sell you. You can put it in your deck, that becomes another traction point, and they can give you VC interest. And sometimes they're actually even open to investing themselves. So we're getting angels from this channel right now. VCs that are not a match can be an excellent, excellent referral. So we've had a founder in the restaurant tech space raising his Series A in US. He spoke to one investor who said it wouldn't be a match, but he literally sent a list of 40 different VCs and said, tell me who you want an intro to, and ended up doing like 15 referrals because he knew everybody and he was open to that. Very often I see reaching out to someone and people say, well, actually, look, it's not for us, but I know another 2 guys you should speak to. And then he would intro, and that's, again, your warm way already to secure a call. So that works really well. It works especially well with someone who's local. So we see this general propensity, like Finnish investors want to help Finnish founders. The person I referred to, he was from Sacramento, and the VC was from Sacramento. So they really bonded over a love for a particular restaurant, and then he was able to make this 15 referrals. So a lot of these even came, in all honesty, I've seen from cold outreach. So someone cold emailing VCs, and then obviously a lot of them don't reply. A lot of them say nothing, but some of them say, hey, let me intro you to someone else. This looks interesting. So think about that. And then your domain influencers. This is probably one of the best ones. Why? Because very often, especially if VCs don't have a domain expertise, they don't get a product. So you need to find people who get your product. And the reason is almost threefold. One, they get your product, again, if they like it, and if they have some weight, you can even put them on a pitch deck and say, you know, this person likes them. They can be your advisor. They can give you feedback around your pitch deck. They can introduce you to potential customers, companies that can be design partners. But I think more importantly, they can do those warm intros. Anyone, I say influencers, obviously they're not like TikTok influencers necessarily, LinkedIn influencers. They're just anyone in this domain with a large network. So it can be as easy as someone who's part of an agency. They work with 100 different companies in your domain, don't have any LinkedIn presence necessarily, are not an influencer, but are super well connected. That works. Again, in the e-com domain, just giving it an example because my background is in e-commerce tech. Who would that be? Founders / CEOs or C-level from companies that raise venture capital, right? So for example, we had an e-commerce tech solution. One of the largest companies in our space is Klaviyo. A CEO or C-level from Klaviyo, because Klaviyo raised so much venture capital, everyone knows them. Getting them as your advisor, getting them as your kind of influencer, they would then make a lot of intros. Industry evangelists who just know tons of people. I've met a couple of those who are constantly at events. You meet them, you don't necessarily know what they do. They work for an agency, they work for a product at some time, but they know everybody. And they usually are super happy to jump on board and connect you to as many people as possible if you pitch them product well enough, or again, if you get them on board as an advisor. Traditional industry influencers, your podcast your newsletter writers, your TikTok guys, probably not TikTok, okay, but podcast host works well, newsletter writers works well, anyone who knows, again, a ton of people. And then customers work really great. Customers are also angels or executives. Customers, first of all, can actually be investors themselves. I've seen a couple of deals where almost entirely it was taken by a customer because they get it, they want the product built, so they're ready to contribute some check. But also there are a lot of for a lot of companies, customers are venture-backed companies. So your design partners might be venture-backed companies. They would be happy to do an intro to their investors or somebody else. Again, keep this in mind, because I feel like these avenues are often completely ignored by founders. They're so narrow focused on, founder VC, like where do we get VC interest, that they forget that there's many other ways to go around it. As an added bonus, like a lot of these influencers, at least based on my past experience, if you get that kind of influencer excited enough that they would want to do your intro, typically they would also potentially want to write you a check. So if they're a past investor themselves, if they're angel investing, if they're just like an executive in a big firm and they have a bit of extra money, they would consider joining the round as an angel. And obviously, again, that helps because that builds credibility in the team, builds credibility in the round. So something to consider. Okay, other path. I'm going to try to get through these faster. I haven't personally explored them, but it has worked for founders that I work with. Co-investors from targets firm, recent rounds. Scout programs. Scout is a pretty interesting route because basically there are all of these people who are scouts looking for opportunities for venture funds. And I think scouts are a little bit easier sometimes to find and pitch to. So you can basically just look for scouts on LinkedIn and see if there are any that are interested. And also they have connections to multiple different funds. So if they think this is a good opportunity, they would make simultaneously a few interests, which is very helpful. Operator angels who frequently co-invest with your target. So you can find those on Angel List, on Twitter, just see like who writes those small checks. Back to the example of the restaurant tech founder that I mentioned, there was like even like a Turkish founder who kept investing 5 to 10K, which is obviously nothing, but he knew everybody. And then, he made 20 to 30 intros because that's what he does. So some of those angels can be super helpful. Law firms, we stopped startup practices. One of the founders we work with just went through the law firm, and law firm did him like 40 or 30 different intros. I mean, obviously they demanded his business as well. We've had another one who went the same path. He had an uncle in the law firm, but again, if you're somewhere there, they would know the people. Same with startup accountants, sometimes CFO shops with VC relationship, they can do that. Bankers, brokers, startup banks work for some people. I think probably mostly like somewhere in Silicon Valley. I haven't seen it working for myself. I'm struggling to find brokers that would like know a lot of people who invest in early stage. But again, I've seen it working for some founders. Corporate venture arms that actually invest themselves. Accelerators obviously have good networks. LPs of early stage funds is an interesting one. We've had one company that went to LPs of the fund because it was easier. And then those LPs basically did an intro in venture fund. So again, I haven't done it, worked for someone, maybe something to consider. Vendor partner programs as well. Founder communities are sometimes great. Now, finding founder communities, I think, is more difficult than finding warm interest. But if you've had like some alumni channels, if you have closed groups, they're like I've seen a bunch of like sales professionals closed groups, like product professionals closed group, founder closed groups. If you are there, sometimes people know a lot of people and can make a lot of interest. Design partners at reputable brands. I've seen people securing interest from conference speakers and judges who's basically coming and saying, hey, you're great. Can you intro me to someone? It's a little bit awkward, but if it works. Demo days, obviously great. Vertical associations, they're like fintech, insurtech, climate groups that have investor members. That works. We have a founder who is in a crane association. So he has an industrial SaaS product. He's in a crane association and he was able to get interest from there. So here you go. Local ecosystem hubs. Hackathons were great for a company that I've known in the Web3 space. Judges and mentors basically are often investors, so they would be able to connect that way. Local angel groups work great. So wherever you are, look for local angel groups. It doesn't even need to be super local. So the restaurant tech founder I mentioned, he got interest from Miami Angels, and that's an entire different part of the country. But some of the angel groups are very active and would invest even somewhere else. Recruiters who place talent into portfolio companies can work. I've had a great guy who was in PR agency, but knew loads of VCs because he was helping them to write PR announcements. And he did like 4 intros for the company he was advising to. Ex-employer, alumni, university alumni network can be very, very powerful, especially if you are from a big employer or a big uni. Grant innovation agency mentors as well. Now, if you don't have all of that, like cold pass still can work. I've seen people closing rounds without having any warm connection, just literally like taking and writing people, hey, how are you? Do you want to invest? Again, works better if you have great team and traction. Can work even without it. So open VC is one route. You can submit to investors there. You have other solutions like Flowly. They actually reached out to us, offered 33% discount to anyone who comes from Playbook. So if you want to ride them, go ahead, explore their solution. ShipShape is a new one. They're also great. I've spoken to the founder there. I think they have a very interesting ability to see if the fund is actively investing and when did they last invest. So that was helpful for me too. You can also submit stuff on VC websites. Never worked for me, I'm going to say. But some people swear by it and say that's like the best way. I think it really depends on whether or not they're really looking at it or not looking. And again, you typically need to have some interesting traction for them to reach out, but you can try it. And then you have stuff like DocSend Fundraising Network. You have an FX Fast. You have like Calm Company. Like you have industry-specific submissions as well. So look into pretty much anything at this stage and see what works for yourself. Other critical things to consider. Run fast. Speed is super important. Successful companies close a fundraise in like less than 12 to 16 months. Again, test. If it doesn't work, go back to building. Network on repeat. No way to escape it. I hate networking. It's super difficult for me to do. It's probably the toughest part of the whole fundraising job, but you need to make it known that you're building. Like update your LinkedIn, build in public if you can, meet people. It takes a lot of time, which is why it's more helpful to run it like in specific sprints rather than like do it continuously. If you can do it continuously, again, you need to build your network because then that network is going to be helpful in 6, 12, and 18 months. Figure out how you can self-engineer fear of missing out. So I've already brought it up, but you need to be prepared to come into every meeting with an exciting validation point. If you have 3 or 4 meetings because you get financing, you can't just pitch the same thing. You need to be able to bring something new and exciting so people understand, wow, this is happening, like we want to invest. And most importantly, don't stop building. Once traction comes, money will follow. Money follows customers. So if you're not seeing fundraising success, figure out how do you get to the next milestone without funding, because once you have attraction, once you have something that works, people are going to follow. Now, some quick practical to-dos. I still have 12 minutes, so I'm going to try to fly through this of how to get organized fast. I've opened, as I said, like I'm just started fundraising myself. I want to show you how that investor process looks like. So it's a little bit more automated. Like where do you find intros? It's more like a bookkeeping and how do you organize everything? So again, started by creating open VC account. I like them. They have loads of information. Started by creating ShipShape accounts. So if you see, you have a lot of funds there. I would generally use a couple of different platforms because I constantly see that not all funds are on all platforms. And I would even do more additional research. So what I've done is I've checked OpenVC, I've checked ShipShape, I've checked probably 4 or 5 in other platforms. I then went to ChatGPT and I wrote a really big kick-ass GPT prompt. And I mean big. This was the prompt. And the goal of this prompt was find 50 investors for early stage e-commerce size startup. And what I wanted to, the reason why I'm using ChatGPT is because very often, like things change, right? So these guys, they don't necessarily have all the funds. They very often won't have like small funds, maybe regional funds, maybe vertical funds. In one way, ChatGPT can kind of help to surface stuff that is not on those databases. And it also can help you to get immediately all of the information that you want, right? So in this case, feel free to screen it or I can send it to you. In this case, I wanted to have a table that would be in Excel. I wanted to have the table categorized. I want to have it categorized by investor name, side, stake focus, geographical, check size, whether they lead or not, where they invest. I wanted to have actually a specific thesis. So like, where are they investing? Is it like e-commerce infrastructure? Is it e-commerce brands? Portfolios and previous companies they invested in, because then I can check if it's relevant, and I can also understand if the company is a competitor or not, and if or not I should write them. Their Twitter, their email, like last fund, everything that I pretty much need. And then based on that, I've also tested fit scoring. So GPT would already put immediately the fit score. And then bunch of other rules down there. But essentially what I got out of that was this, which was already very helpful, right? So I get this table. This is great. I can work with this. I found at least funds that I want to get into. Now, I need to work with this database now. So what I've done is I've basically exported it to Notion and organized it in Notion, where all of these text, when relevant, got converted into tags. And the reason I've organized it into Notion is because I want to be able to then, the way I outreach is I outreach by investors, right? I don't outreach by funds, because fund consists of people. So I need to find a specific person. So then I created a second database based on finding people. So used Clay. Clay is great, probably the best solution out there right now that has correct emails of all people. And we've tested a lot. So imported companies to Clay to find the right people and then enrich them with work emails. If you do it in a smart way, this is for free. So Clay is notoriously known for being expensive, but they give you initial credits to get started. And like, if you complete certain actions, you get more credit. So all of this was done for free on like a trial Clay account. And you can see here that, well, basically there's run like email search to locate all the right emails, locate all the right LinkedIns as well. And then from there, based on this, I've composed a second Notion database that has emails and it's connected to funds. So basically just reversed it, right? I want to be able to have all of the people. And the reason that I want to have all of the people is because on top of these people who are a part of a VC fund, I'm also adding people who are influencers, so who are not investors. They have a separate tag. I'm also adding people who are angel investors, potentially. I'm also adding people who I just know, right? And they're going to refer me to someone. So I'm adding all of it. And then the next step is here. I'm doing a Kanban based on this, where we have like find warm pass, who I still need to contact, who I need to send intro, who already reached out, who committed, who passed. And when I click on it, I can see all of the information. I can also add meeting notes. So in the next round, in 12 months, when I have to come back to this, and I've seen that people pass by maybe they wanted to invest, I can even understand why they pass, right? And I have like one source of truth in everything. And it's all interconnected. So if I make a change in one of the databases, make changes in another, is super helpful. And then I'm also collecting it to calendar. And this is just, right, an example. It gives me my tasks. And this is how you run a very tight fundraise. So I hope this was helpful. It's a wrap almost. How we can help, add me on LinkedIn. I'm always super happy to chat, or at least be connected. If you're building something relevant, happy to do a warm intro as well, if I feel like I know someone. We have our fundraising copilot. I think it runs with a discount in the next 24 hours. Essentially, just has a library of insights. It has loads of slides from successful fundraisers. So we've collected over 100 different successful fundraisers, pulled all of the slides together. It also has templates of the decks that raise funding. Most importantly, I think it has templates of the models that raise funding, financial models, so you can just download and use them. It has some VC contacts too, but I'm going to be honest, again, I'm completely pro using multiple different platforms, so I wouldn't say that you need to use one. So feel free to check this one up. And then we also do pitch deck and modeling support, so we have a team that does that. can do free pitch deck reviews of the model, advise you on, where you are, does it resonate or not, what do we think, and do we see that it's going to land in the current investment landscape. And that's it. Thank you very much. I really hope that this has been somewhat helpful. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go into questions as promised. So someone is saying hi from London. Hi from London. Do property investors invest if you don't use AI? Asks Nicola. Nicola, can you please specify what is the solution? So just give me a little bit more to go off, and I'm happy to answer that question. Generally, what I can say is that real estate market is a very different market altogether. It's people invest without even AI. I think that's absolutely fine. So, but real estate investors right now, so like real estate VC investors, they often want to have an AI component. What I've seen successfully, if you don't have that component, sometimes it's easier to get finance from just big real estate companies. They have a lot of capital. They don't necessarily can write you cash, but they can help you in some other way. So typically there is some level of arrangement that you are able to make. Okay, Anam is asking what the due diligence requires and the next steps after securing an investment, as well as info on dilution. So dilution info, I think in pre-seed varies a lot. I see anything from 10% to as much as 20% that investors are going to take. In seed used to be around 20%. I think it's now down to 17%. Series A, I think around 20 to 25 that I'm seeing. Again, some companies are getting away with like 18%. So that's typically what you can expect. What you can expect in due diligence depends a lot on the stage, depends a lot on your startup. Some investors will just do due diligence on founders. They will speak to you. They will ask people around. They won't do much more than a deck if you're very early on. If you're later on in the revenue, they want to obviously audit your financials. I've seen investors whose way of doing due diligence is literally just calling up your customers or calling up your partners and being like, hey, do you know these dudes? Do you actually like the product? Do you use it, etc.? So that can entail as well. But typically financial due diligence around your books, if you have any, make sure that the numbers work, they're audited, etc. Customer due diligence, if you have customers, speak to people who already bought it, how and why. Tech due diligence, if you have a ready tech solution, sometimes that's done by the outside third firms. And then team due diligence, some funds just run with interviews, and then some hire outside companies that actually do the whole background check and make sure that you are legit and you're not a runaway or something, and Interpol is not after you. So yeah, that depends. What happens after securing an investment? You build, you grow, you go, you start speaking to investors immediately so you can secure your next investment. Okay. Would investors be interested in tourism business with ground presence in Africa? So first and foremost, probably only African investors would be interested, like locally, to invest in Africa. Tourism is massively not in demand right now. So it's going to be exceptionally difficult to get people to be interested. Again, I would probably go like the influencer route. I would find someone who knows tourism, has done something in tourism, speak to them, and see what it helps. Okay, Mohammed is helping here. That's very right. Okay, yes, you can always add AI elements. Yes, Vishnu is saying that they had to go through due diligence on the technology, entire stack was reviewed. So that's very often we had kind of the same. I'm loading questions now. Sorry, I just went through the chat. So I'm loading questions and it just shows me loading. So let's wait a little bit and I'm gonna get there. Okay, because it doesn't load for me, I'm going to ask my team, guys, if someone of you is still here, can you please send me the questions in chat separately as a picture, because it stopped loading on my end. Or just paste it into chat window. In the meantime, Stephanie says she's a perfectionist, struggle with whether to send pre-seed batch to prospective angels that need more design love. Do you recommend sending, updating, or waiting? Um, I think if they're, so first of all, show them to friendly people first. Show them to someone you love, right? And get a test run, and they're going to tell you yes or no. Sometimes, in all honesty, if the people are friendly, I wouldn't even show the deck. I would just explain them. And if you explain it really well and really good, I think that works already. Um, I think right now you have so many AI tools. Just sit down in 2 days. Just, get it in a way that works and then send it out. Like, you can't afford to wait. You need to have conversations. I don't think that you can afford to send bad pitch deck either. So everyone I'm speaking to right now from investors say they require two things from investors. One is from founders. One is speed and one is taste. So what you're asking is both of those. They want founders and team to be really fast and get to market fast and execute fast. And they also want people who have taste so that you can build products that resonate with customers. So if you send crappy deck, it's fast, but it doesn't speak of taste. So potentially they look at it and they're like, oh, how are you going to delight your customers? If you send an amazing deck, but, they ask you, how long did it take you to come up with this? And you're like, a few months, then the speed is lacking. So better figure out how to do those design mockups now, fast. Feel free to reach out to our team. We have great designers. They've helped on that before. Okay, is it better to approach with a number in mind and aim to spread the raise among multiple VCs, or no number and shoot for what we can? I think a typical raise is typically, it's very rarely one VC, right? It's typically 7 to 8 people. There are people who would always co-lead and who want to co-lead once you found a lead. There are angels who want to co-invest, who've done the intros. So I think that generally, you need to have a number in mind around how much you want to raise. You need to go to many people. You need to get market feedback around the valuation and that number. Adjust if need be. So I wouldn't go rigidly, we're raising 2 million or nothing. We're raising the round. We're thinking around 500,000 to 2 million. We're listening to the round around the valuations. We're hearing the number of 10 million. Like, how does it sound? You get feedback and then you try to fill that round. Obviously, easier if you're in pre-seed or pre-revenue because you can just run with safe. If you run with safe, you don't have to be worried about that. Okay, do you help pre-seed with strategic advisory, and do you introduce startups to VC or angels? We help with strategic advisory. As the slide said, we don't do introductions. Okay, we will do introductions if we see there is a fit, but you need many. Out of the network we have, normally maybe like a few would match you in terms of your round size, team expertise, geolocation. So if you are counting on us for interest, not a good, I'd go back, rewatch the session, go to slides, go do the work. Would investors be interested in aviation inspection utilizing AI with all that's going in the industry, and would having traction like LOIs, SLAs, or customers enroll in the pilot program, even if it's free at the moment, help? Yes. So I'm not sure about aviation inspection utilizing AI. I think I've seen a couple of aviation startups. They've struggled a little bit, but generally having traction like LOIs help. Some investors might say, okay, it's not enough. We wanted to convert to revenue. Some might say, this is okay, great, and we're ready to run a check. Depends on how much you're asking. We've seen a company in this space who was asking for 5 million. It was a no for investors. We've seen a company in this space asking for 500,000, having that traction, and it worked. So it depends around your stage. It depends on the brands. It depends on how interesting is the product. It can be interesting. The fact that investors are unwilling or show no interest in investing in Africa is actually sad. Yes, absolutely. The fact that investors are not showing interest in investing in pre-seed and want to have revenue is also sad from my perspective. But unfortunately, it is what it is. So it's everything that I can say. And now I have your questions here as well. So James is asking, okay, this one I've answered. Can you help from a pitch deck to raising investment for a beauty brand? Yes, we've done actually loads of beauty decks that successfully raise funding. So happy to have a conversation. Can you help us to build the investor network? I mean, we can have a conversation always, but again, you need to do it. The thing people hate most if it's someone else is building investor network for you, because for founders, again, it's just a proxy that you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. So you're not going to be able to build a business either. So if you need to do it by yourself. Again, happy to help, happy to have a chat. Do you work with US-based technology startups and entrepreneurs with similar but not identical products in the international markets? Yes, absolutely. Happy to. Do you recommend the slide with 10-year summary financials, which includes revenue, earnings, estimated valuation? No, don't do that. Absolutely don't recommend. It's kind of like if you're taking someone for a first date, right? And you're excited and it's all like great, you had a great conversation, and then suddenly like you ask them to surface, their bank account, or the other person starts talking about his doctor appointments. Like it kills the mood a little bit. Sometimes investors want to see it, but I would always keep it a second meeting. And the reason is you want to make sure they're super sold on your idea as is, on your team, on what you're executing before they look into numbers. Very often they get to numbers and you're off. Like that 3x, 3x, 4x that I've spoken about in the beginning. If you're off, they look at it and they're like, oh, it can't be big. If they're already sold on your idea and then they see the financials that are off, they're willing to make it work with you. They're willing to kind of talk to you and go, okay, look, we think your numbers are off. Let's talk about them, why they're off. So I think it might help to include just like a revenue projection if you're very confident in it. It might be helpful to talk about your path to profitability, maybe if you're confident in it. It's more helpful to include those numbers if you are like in Series A stage and you already have existing financials. Obviously, you include them. So anything on the historicals, always yes. On the projection, not so much. But valuation, I would generally recommend to get up. I've seen when people put valuation on their slides, half of people immediately say no, purely because of valuation. Like you don't want to kill your conversions in that way, that fast. So that's it. Should we put our ask in the deck or leave it for follow-up meetings? It's a good question. The standard practice is you put the ask in your deck, and people like that clarity. It's always kind of like, okay, you are, what are you asking for? You want to put that clear, the use of a fund, etc. However, here's a problem and here's a trick. So what I've seen happening is you go to the market now and you put that you're raising 2 million and then no one is interested. And then you say, okay, so now we need to hit pause and we need to rethink it. And then you go to the market again in 6 months to the same investors, and now they know that you haven't raised and no one gave you 2 million. It's still okay, but it's not the best situation to be in. So if you're not super confident, the way that I approach it, I go to investors and I say, we're thinking of opening up a round. I prepare them a pitch deck. I show them where the money would go, like what do we need to achieve and the next milestones, but I don't talk about the amount. And I don't talk that, we're raising already. And then towards the end, I basically ask, is it lending? How do you guys feel about it? We're thinking about opening it around. We're thinking probably like 2 million right now. Does it make sense? What are your thoughts? Is it something you would be interested in? And then they typically say, oh, it's like kind of too early. Or we think, okay, kind of, might be interesting. So based on that initial feedback, you understand that. To me right now, that works better, even though some people are upset that the specific ask is not on the slide and they keep kind of coming back like, why didn't you put the ask? Because I don't burn my chances. I then can come back to the same people later on and say that we decided not to raise at the time and we decided to focus on traction. And I didn't like burn my ticket. So that helps. How we can reach out to you for strategic advisory? My LinkedIn, happy to chat, shoot me a message. I'm traditionally very bad with replying to any messages, but I'm going to be better. I promise I'll reply you. What is the scope of prop tech? We're regulated by DFCA. Okay. I'm not sure what that means. Sorry. Do you help in discovering an indicative valuation? Yes, we can tell you. But I also have to say, if you're generating revenue, your valuation is your multiple, which is super easy. You look at the market, you look at the multiple, we can help you figure out. If you are not generating revenue, your valuation is basically the percentage you're willing to give away. And again, that's standard. Like some Middle Eastern investors want to have like 50%. You never give that. It's too much. The market is, on average around 20%. If you are a great team, something great might be like closer to 15, but it's not going to be much off. So here's your valuation. I already helped to figure the valuation out, which is super unfair because what it means is that pre-seed companies, pre-revenue companies, if they're able to raise, they're able to raise at a higher valuations than some of the revenue generating companies. And it's ridiculous. It's the state of the market. So we've had a company that didn't even have product screens go and raise 4 million of a 40 million valuation. And then a company that is generating 3 million in revenue, struggling to raise 1 million. And that happens all the time. So companies are able to raise because in the pre-seed, that valuation can be anything, right? Like anything you put down, it's like a function of how much you're raising and how much you're giving away. But once you've started generating revenue, then the math is there. And people look at other companies and similar companies, what they're doing, and they're applying that multiple. So you have to be very, very careful about that, because once you've raised money, it has to last you enough so that you don't take a down round, right? Because if that money just lost you to like 20K or 500,000, and then your valuation is massively down, it's not doing anybody's a favor, and probably investors are going to be a tidy bit angry. So yeah, think about it in advance. That's super important. Okay, is there anything that I've missed? I don't think so. I think someone is still typing, so let's just wait for that final one to come, if Hunter is indeed typing something. I hope this was helpful. I'm super, thank you very much for staying. I know we're 11 minutes over. I hope that this was good. I'm still gonna stay for that question, a final question, if there is any, for a few minutes. But otherwise, thank you very much. Reach out if you have any questions. Massive luck with your fundraise. It's not easy, but it's fun. I'm back into it. I can tell you it's fun. If it's working, it's working. Don't rely on other people to do stuff for you. You want to have a network that's going to work for you now. You want to have a network that's going to work for you in a year time, in 5-year time. You're going to have a network where people are going to be excited to work with you, and start building it now. Even if you don't raise money this season, don't rely on advisors, don't rely on anyone else. Start building your own stuff. And that means even if this startup fails, another one will work out and people will help you out. So have a great evening. Have a great rest of the day. And thank you for joining. Best of luck.